Like I said, it's nice to have a small group tonight, because this is a meaty topic, and I think that, with a smaller group, we can maybe get a little more in depth. We can dig in a little bit more into practicing with this and kind of maybe sharing some of our experiences with it. Tonight we're going to talk about stripping it all away. Stripping it all away. And this is an incredibly important point that has to be made. Because many times when I come and I sit and I talk and I share things with people, I'm often trying to paint a landscape of, the nature of who we are, the nature of what we are, the confusion of the conditioned mind, and what we find when we move beyond that confusion, what we are beyond that condition. And so it's kind of it's in response to answering the question, who am I? What am I? And providing some sort of clue as to what we are. But I've also said many times that everything I say is a lie in some way, shape, or form. Because the truth itself cannot be expressed in words. It can only be pointed to. And so every time I offer words, they're limited. They're very limited. And it's not like they're an outright lie meant to, get somebody to think in a certain way or create new levels of conditioning or any of that. It's just the words don't work. The words, they don't work. Oftentimes what will happen is, when we hear an expression of truth, however articulate or beautiful or however choppy that expression of truth may be, we hear something in it and we say, ooh, and we grab it. We grab it from that position of ego. We grab it as if it's something that we can own, and it becomes a new aspect of identity. We often go from being an egoic entity to developing a spiritual ego. In this practice, stripping it all away, it's the complete reverse of how I normally share these things. It is the process of negation. It is that process of going through all of the stories we tell ourselves about who and what we are and saying, not this, not that. It's about looking at all the ways in which we identify ourselves, all of the ways in which we tell a story about our concept of self, all of the ways in which we are attached to and clinging to that concept. And it's more about saying, you are not any of the things that you can conceive yourself to be. And it is only when all notions are set aside, only when all words and concepts and ideas have failed you, only then does what you truly are present itself. Only then does the I wake up from itself, and that which is becomes present and aware. But this process is one where it comes out of many of the Hindu schools. There are a couple of particular schools, a particular school of yoga, and then a particular school within the Vedic tradition, where this process, this neti, not this, not that, it's connected with I am. Right? And it's interesting, these things can all be laid out. Hinduism and Buddhism and Sufism and Taoism and all of these things. We can look at how they're all kind of connected and how we can take this bit here and this bit here and this bit here and create a very interesting set of steps almost. One being the recognition of I am. There is just the presence of being. Just the presence of being. There's no, I am is the end of it. It's the end of it. If I say I am Brad, or I am a man, or I am whatever, you've extended into an identity. And that identity is false. And this process of not this, not that is whenever you say I am and you add something to it, you immediately slice that away. And you say, no, I am. And whatever identification you add to that, whatever story you add to that, you cut that away and you say, not this, not that. And I'll talk about this process from a couple of different perspectives. But as you go through these steps and you continue to work with, I am settling into just the presence of being and ripping away every story that gets attached to that sensation of experience, that notion of being present, the experience of presence. You strip it all away, one thing after another. And it gets interesting because then this enters into a place where we can talk about the Buddhist concept of anatta, right? No self. Because as you start stripping away all of the conceptual ideas of who and what we think we are, we're left with nothing. At the end of it, we're left with nothing. Even the I am falls away. Because it's just a point of reference. Really, this focus on I am that's used in this process of self-inquiry is just kind of a root. It's a place where we can plant ourselves so that we can keep the field smaller. Instead of, trying to look at every particular story and dismiss every particular story, we just hold on to a small center. We hold on to a small center, we cut everything else away, and then as the rest of it falls away, and then we're in a place where we're concentrated on I am, and we watch the I am very closely, and we begin to see that everything that we were telling ourselves emanated from something that itself wasn't real, and the I am, it too falls away, when all that's left is the presence of being. This process then gets into, the Tao, the nature of the Tao, where we say, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. When self falls away, when you reach into that place of anatta, no self, and you recognize that the conceptual self has no reality to it, and you step into your essential nature as the presence of being, of awareness itself, because that's just awareness, then you're entering into that Tao. You're entering into that place where the true Tao cannot be spoken. And it goes back to what I said before about how everything is words and concepts and ideas. It's ultimately going to fail us into ourselves beyond ourselves, to the point where we begin to recognize beyond is what, we're all concepts. Every way in which we attempt to define ourselves, it has to all fall away. Everything we say to ourselves, everything others say about us, every role that we take on, every aspect of identity has to fall away. All of it. This isn't to say that you go anywhere. You're still you, just the best version of yourself without carrying all of the weight and all of the baggage and all of the issues and challenges and concerns and the attitude towards life that, why is it so hard? It's no longer difficult because the I that is experiencing difficulty isn't there anymore. There's just the presence of being that witnesses and recognizes and observes that everything occurring is of the self. It's all happening within the experience of being. There's no separation, there's no division between the presence of being expressed here and the situations we find ourselves in, and the people that we find ourselves in them with. There's no separation in any of it. It's all flowing as part of the essential nature that animates all things, that gives rise to all things. And so these things, they lead into each other in a way so that, this idea of I am can be played with, so that it's that root that we hold on to until we cut everything off, and then, the neti, not this, not that, and then we go, oh, wow, look, things open up. It opens up in such a big and dramatic way that the not self, the there is no conceptual self, makes it so readily apparent that it's undeniable. Its quality is undeniable. You're just like, wow. And then you're stuck in a place where you're like, well, now I have to get over that, right? I have to learn how to accept the fact that there isn't really a me. I have to figure out how to work with that in a world filled with me's. people jockeying for position and control, people who are saying, but my opinion. And you're like, all opinions are equally false. Why do you believe yours has weight? All opinions are equally false. The ego is the only thing that has an opinion. When all of the aspects of identity fall away, there's nothing left to hold on to or cling to or say, well, here's what I must defend, or here's the role that I must play. It's not so much that anymore as it is just moving with what is. We talked about that last week, right? Loving what is. Loving what is. And it begins with this notion, right? Not the body. We'll talk about a few different ways in which this experience of no self, of neti really, of the not this, not that can be used. One way is not this, not that can be used as a tool to move us into the awakening, move us into that initial moment of clarity. We go, uh-oh, I'm not who I thought I am. I'm not who I thought I was, and this isn't what I thought it was either. Uh-oh. It can move us into that place, and then it can also be used as a tool to help us deepen into the reality, to become okay with the experience of it, to find balance as we attempt to walk with one foot in the realm of truth and one foot in this story that we tell ourselves. So the first part really, looking at how we can use it as a tool to move into awakening is to recognize we're not the body. Right? We're not the body. And there are so many great ways in which New Age philosophies and belief systems will express this. And they're all beautiful. It's quite beautiful. But the most common thing is, we'll look at it from a scientific perspective. We'll say, from a scientific perspective, when you were born, you were born and you were this big, and then you were this big, and then you were this big, and now you're this big, and so the body's constantly changing, right? I mean, your skin cells are falling off, your hair is falling away, your fingernails are growing, they have to be clipped. There's no physical self that remains unaltered or unchanged. There's no static nature to the body. There's no static nature to the body. It's always changing. It's always changing. So how can something that always changes be real? If it's always changing, it's subject to birth and sickness and death. And we ourselves, as what we truly are, we're not subject to those things. We are the awareness behind it all. So you go through this looking at it from the scientific perspective. And that's good. That's useful. Another perspective is people say, well, I'm a soul. I'm a spirit. I am the Atman, whatever term we want to use. But that within, there's a light within me. There is a fire within me. There's the ember of God which is shining through me. But, it's still something that we're holding on to, something that we're grasping onto as if it's real and as if it has meaning, and we're saying, this is in me. And we are not in the body. The body is in us. Now think about this for a moment. Think about it from the perspective of awareness, of consciousness, of our experience of being. Your ability to interact with your own physical nature and all things in the physical realm, it's all happening through sense perception. The eyes don't really see, though. They convert light. Right? The ears don't really hear. The ears are working with vibration in the air. There is a statistic I remember reading a long time ago. I used to use it all the time when I was on the street. The human mind can process over 400 billion bits of information per second, and yet the conscious awareness strips that down to just 2,000, which is something on the scale of like 1/110th of a percentage. So if this has the ability to process 400 billion bits of information per second, but it's only, conscious awareness is only working with 2,000, what's missing? What's missing? What else is going on that through sense perception we're unable to grasp? And recognize that your sense perception, it's all happening inside of you. The world doesn't exist out there. There is something that appears to be occurring outside of you, but that's not reality. The body is nothing more than a thin veil between the inner and the outer that exists only for sense perception, for the purpose of sense perception. Inner and outer, there's no such thing as inner and outer. There's just this. And it's all of the same stuff. Sense perception is the method by which conscious awareness experiences itself. And the body, the experience of the body, is created in conscious awareness. Now one can say, yeah, but you got to have the brain in order to have consciousness, and so the body has to come before. And I say that's a wonderful chicken or egg conversation, which assumes that you're the body to begin with, which assumes that you were born. But the truth is, you didn't come into the world, you came out of the world. You are like a bud coming out of a flower. But you're still the flower, you're still the bud, you're still that which then folds back up and goes back in. It's just this cycle. We're not the body. The body is that expression of consciousness that we experience. And that's all it is. It's not even a vehicle. I've said before, well, it's the body is the vehicle of expression, it's the mechanism by which, all of that. But that's not really true either. Not really true. That which is the nature of reality is so fundamental that when you touch it for yourself and the whole thing falls away as this tremendous illusory, it's just so simple. It's just one thread that continues to wrap back around on itself. And over here within the thread there's a knot that gives rise to form, and you're that knot in the thread. And so is this person, and so is this person, so is this object, and so is this subject, and so is this experience. It's all made of the same string. No separation in any of it. And that's a way in which we're telling a story about it. We're not the body. If something happens with the body, it's an experience within consciousness. So we're not the body. So you can examine the not the body from many different perspectives. You can look at it from the perspective of saying, all right, well, scientifically I understand, the body's always changing, and if it's subject to change, then it's not, there's no reality to anything that's subject to change. There's suffering in holding on to anything that's subject to change. There's suffering in that. The body is always changing. If you want to hold on to the body, if you want to be the body, by all means go ahead. There's only so much makeup and so many, hair dye kits and, so much weight loss and so much, exercise and so much. There's only so much you can do until age catches you and you go, uh-oh. Oh, what am I going to do about this wrinkle? My hair's slipping away. Uh-oh, I've, put on a few more pounds than I'd like. If you want to be the body, that's great, but the body's always shifting, always changing. And identifying ourselves with the body creates great suffering. I have this issue here. Oh no, I lost this. Oh no, I have that. Oh, now I'm sick. Now I'm going to die. What am I going to do now? If you're attached to the body, if you're identified with the body, then death is very scary. I'm going to stop. There won't be a me anymore. What happens when the body's up? The body falls away. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not the body. What am I? I'm this other thing. Okay, now I'm the soul, the spirit, the Atman again. There's something in here that will live on. It's a wonderful notion. Yes and no. That assumes that you were born. And that you were all that assumes that there was some form of separation to begin with that was never there. There is no separation. The experience of life is part of it, and it's all wound up together. It's all the same stuff. The body is a big part of it, but we're not our thoughts either. We're not our thoughts. We're not the structure or the emotional content or the methods of identification that we connect with, that we attach to, that we identify with. We're not those things. And any of us who have practiced any form of meditation at all have seen just how chaotic the mind can be, how one thought comes and another thought comes and another thought. You can't keep up with yourself. It doesn't end. And some of these thoughts, they're beautiful. Oh, look. And some of these thoughts are, crap. Most of them are in the crap category because we're so busy living from the pains of our past and our desires for what feels good that somehow we're creating a lot of turmoil in the process of being a thinking being, in the process of experiencing life through the mind. And so, being able to look at each and every thought that moves through us, every thought that moves through us, and be able to say, I am not that. To be able to go, just be in the presence of being and watch these things move through the field of awareness in a way that allows you to just see them passing by. They're not even about you, because there's no you in it. There's just the thought passing by. And when you grab it and you say, I am the thought, then your behavior reflects your delusion. Which is all fine, because that's okay too. That's all fine. To be able to see thoughts arise and not get lost in them is essential. The I am not the body, I am not the mind. The body appears in the mind. Isn't that interesting? The mind is a projection of the body. Isn't that interesting? Well, if I'm neither, but the two are self-reinforcing, it becomes an interesting predicament to play with. Neither is real, but they reinforce each other. So both have to be seen through. If you can be in this place where you say, well, I'm not my thoughts, but you're still identified with the body, that identification with the body is still a thought. And if you're so identified with the body that you're allowing your thoughts to be yours, if you're claiming them as I, because this is my body, this is my brain, these are my thoughts, these are my senses, these are my perceptions, that reinforces thought. So both have to be seen through, at least to some level, enough to be able to break through into that awakened experience, that initial experience, that moment of, I've been had. I love it when Ram Dass uses that language, right? It's one day I woke up and I realized I'd been had. But that's the truth. One day you wake up and you go, all my life I was told I'm this person, and I'm not. So if we look deeply at how we define ourselves and how we identify ourselves here, now, in this moment, it's interesting how, if you go to a party or you meet some friends or, you're meeting somebody for the first time in a work environment, whatever the case may be, you walk up to each other, you say, hi, my name is. There you go. First layer of identification. I have a name. That name is me. I wear that name. It has all these attributes. And people will often, the very first question people will ask is, what do you do for a living? How much of our identification is wrapped up in what we do for money? What do you do for a living? Oh, well, I'm this, or I'm that. You're not. And then you can, over dinner, you may be, having conversations about various things, and people will say, well, I really don't like Donald Trump. And poof, suddenly now you're on politics, and now you're in your identification with, well, I'm a Republican, well, I'm a Democrat, well, I'm not aligned with anybody, well, I'm against everybody, well, this guy's an idiot, and the whole government is failing, and it's just, whoa. The moment politics comes up, you watch everybody in that space shift into their identity with their political affiliation. And suddenly it's like, you guys sit on that side of the table, and we'll sit on this side of the table. Our religious views are very much the same way. We identify with, well, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Buddhist, or I'm whatever. And because that's what I am, and that's what I believe, and my whole, religion's huge because religion affects our whole outlook on life, our whole relationship with life. And so if we are caught in a place where we are identified with our religion, we create a huge gap, a huge chasm of separation between ourselves and everyone who isn't that religion. But you're not that religion. It's a set of beliefs that are based on a set of conditions that have been plugged into what we think we are. And that creates all kinds of trouble. And it's even worse because it's like, well, okay, you're a Christian and I'm a Christian. And then you start talking about what version of Christian are you? And you go, I don't like, I'm a Protestant, I'm a Catholic. Well, we must kill each other. We believe in all the same stuff except this one little thing over here and maybe this one little thing over here. And, we all believe that we're supposed to love and, all that stuff. But, since we can't agree on this, we'll just wipe each other out. And then you get even deeper. You might have two people of the same denomination within a particular religion who say, what version of the Bible are you connected to? Well, my version of the Bible is better than your version of the Bible because your version of the Bible got all these things wrong. Really? And it continues on. And this is true of every religious tradition. Within the Muslim tradition, you have Shiites and Sunnis who are killing Sufis because Sufis believe something slightly different, but they hold all the same principles. And the Shiites and Sunnis are killing each other because they have different cultural traditions that are inherent in the way they engage with the world. Layers of identity. If you're a parent, how closely do you identify with the role of parent? Are you so closely identified with the role of parent that you define yourself that way in a way that isn't healthy for you or for the children that you're responsible for? We watched this wonderful show called The Goldbergs on Hulu. And we love watching the show. The mother in that, she is the most manipulative, controlling ego you could ever hope to meet, filling the role of parent, fully identified with the role of parent. And one of the things she says so often is when something's going the way she doesn't like, she's like, I failed as a mother. I failed as a human being. How closely identified we are with all of these things. And this process of stripping everything away, of using this, not that approach, is to engage those aspects of our identity and recognize that I am not that. I am not my name, I am not my sex, I am not my race, I am not my political affiliation, I am not my religious affiliation. I am none of those things. And then somebody can say, no, you're the collection of them. And I would say, are you really? If you were to sit down and say, how many data points would you need to track in order to fully explain who one particular individual is? How many different data points? It certainly isn't 5 or 10, which is kind of like the majority of most of the big stuff we identify. There might be 5 or 10 really big things we identify with, and that's most of how we live our lives. But when we really start to get to degrees of subtlety, what you're looking at would be, millions, if not billions, of individual data points that relate to every aspect of your life, every moment, every interaction, every reaction, all of it. And if you were to sit down and say, well, here's who I am in all of these categories, here's who I am for each and every one of these things, by the time we got to the end of the list, we'd have to start over because we've changed on at least half of them. Because When you started the thing, you were like, oh, this is great. And when you end the thing, you're like, holy shit, that was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. That right there is a change. So you're not the collection of them either, because that's always moving and shifting and changing and altering. And if you say, this person is these things, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're busy trying to be someone. And when you're busy trying to be someone, you're assigning a somebodyness to everyone else too. And when you're trying to interact with people and you're busy telling yourself, here's the story of me, and here's the story of you, none of it's true. It's all in the mind, all of it. But you're trying to engage with life from the perspective of being somebody. You've already lost yourself in the illusion, in the delusion. You're already inflicting yourself upon your own experience and on the experience of the other beings you're engaging with as well. You're so busy being somebody and so busy assigning somebodyness to everyone else, you're putting yourself and everyone else into a box. And that's why this kind of a practice, talking about not this, not that, is the way to get yourself out of your own box. And as you get out of your own box, you begin to recognize, I'm not just doing it to myself. I'm doing it to everyone and everything. I've put it all in a box. And over here, I've written on the side of it the name of a person. Over here, I've written on the side of it the name of a particular religious persuasion that is not my own. Over here, I've written, and you have created separation and division between yourself in your box and that which you have written, on. You've said, I'm over here and you're over there. And that's illusion. There is the appearance of these things. There is the appearance of these things happening within the experience, within the perception of reality as we experience it, and that's fine. But, stepping back from that position where we're so busy identifying ourselves with everything, stepping back from that and into pure awareness, stepping back into that, back from that and saying, and watching the person, seeing the person as something that is not you, but exists within you. That every person exists in you. Every person exists within your mental construct. Everything exists within your mental construct. All that exists is the reality that you create. Now, this isn't to say, like in the common New Age traditions, you create your own reality and you can have this and this. No. It's that your relationship with reality is governed by the stories you tell yourself about what you think reality is. That's what it means. And if you're busy telling yourself a story that includes separation and division, that's not a good story. I mean, it may work for you, and if you can find peace in a way that, if you can have separation and division and still find peace, then amen, go for it. But most beings who have gone this path will tell you there is no peace to be found in that place. Not real, not lasting, not meaningful. It too will fall away. Not this, not that. It's all those, if you look deeply and you begin to recognize, oh look, here's this way I'm identifying myself, and here's this way I'm identifying myself, and here's this way. And you let go of those things. You look deeply at them and you recognize there's no reality to them, and you let go of them one after another, after another, after another, after another. What is left when you have stripped it all away? What is left when you have said to yourself in each and every case, I am not that. I am not this. That I am that I was talking about at the very beginning, that just that presence of being, which again, when you started to strip everything else away and you understand that you are not any of these things, then this conversation about what you are, it's no longer notional. It's no longer something grounded in words, concepts, and ideas. It's something experiential, direct, and without explanation. It is a mystery. When you arrive at that place where you surrender into the mystery, When you say to yourself, I don't know, I have no clue what I am. I don't know if I exist or don't exist. I don't know if this is real or unreal. When you get to that place, when you are in that place where you say, I don't know is the beginning of true wisdom. I don't know. I know nothing. All I know is that I am, and even that's questionable. And that is the heart of the whole spiritual practice, is to get to that place where you no longer need to define yourself at all. You are just a raw expression of awareness, unfiltered, unconditioned, unimpeded. There's no yesterday that's holding you back, and there's no tomorrow that's pushing you forward. There's just this. Always just this. And you are it. You're in it. It's here. And it's expressing itself. And it's all connected. And until we learn our lessons, until we begin to really embrace the truth of I don't know, and the truth of just allowing things to be as they are, it's a very difficult, very challenging journey that's filled with tremendous suffering. Suffering that we ourselves create because the experience of the world is the experience that we create in our minds. When you turn that knob, when you flip that switch, when you recognize that any suffering that I'm encountering is suffering that I myself am creating because I am not connecting with reality as it is, that's a great moment to go, and I'm not that. Eventually, this whole process of not this, not that, and the whole process of negation, of letting go, frees us up to the point where we're no longer in thought at all. We've seen the illusory nature of thought. We know that we're not the body. We understand when I say you're the presence of being, when I say there's this awareness, you know what that means. And it isn't something that you can hear it said 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways, and you can understand what they're trying to say, but until you have it, until you've experienced it, it doesn't quite have the texture that it has when it is experienced. And that's why ultimately all of this stuff, all of these methods, all of these ways within which we engage these spiritual practices, spiritual traditions, and spiritual beliefs, all of it is meant to fail us into ourselves when we get to that point where we say, I don't know, and I don't need to know. I'm okay with not knowing. I'm okay surrendering to the mystery because that loving, intelligent awareness, moving all things in the direction of its own purpose, knows better than I. And how do I know that's true? Because I am not in it. The I that thinks things should be otherwise has no reality to it. That which is in resistance to reality is illusory. And that is what we're working to let go of as we start with I am. And then we say not this, not that. And we stop defining ourselves. We stop creating ourselves over and over again. Well, now I'm this, and now I'm this, and now I'm this, and now I'm this. No. None of that is true. It's like when you get right down to it, you're a set of eyeballs experiencing the world. That's it. It's all you are. A set of eyeballs experiencing the world. A set of ears experiencing the world. The nature of touch, the nature of taste, and the nature of smell. That's it. Unconditioned. No filters. Just the raw experience. All right, so there's a lot to that. That's a lot of stuff. But that process of neti-neti, not this, not that, can be used to help us get into that awakened experience. And then it can also be used in that place where as we encounter thoughts on the other side of the awakening, as we see ourselves engaging in new stories and we get caught, to recognize, to practice, not this, not that. I'm not the story. I'm not the issue. I'm not the challenge. I'm not the problem. I'm not the belief. I'm not the opinion. I'm none of those things. over and over and over and over again until they fall away, until the mind is quiet. And if the mind isn't quiet, this too. Because you're just an expression of consciousness, always doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're caught in a moment of unconsciousness, if you're caught in a moment where you're sleeping and you're tripping over yourself and you're making everyone else's lives miserable, that's what you're supposed to be doing in that moment. There's no judgment in that. And if you're fully awake and you're embracing everything from that position of, that too. And both will come and go as is necessary, as is required by that loving, intelligent awareness that is moving all things as needed. Because it's going to put you where you need to be, and it's going to have you act in accord with what it needs to have happen, so that the ripples that affect you affect others the way they're supposed to. It's that continuous process of recognizing none of this is personal. It's impersonal, and we're all on the same journey because we're all of the same stuff. We are all the same being behind it. And wherever we started from and wherever we end up collectively is irrelevant. What matters most is how we ourselves in this moment work within our own experience of being with earnestness, with sincerity, with honesty, to find the truth within ourselves and to be that truth, not to just talk about it, not to just pretend at it, not to just practice it, but to be it. To be it fully. A quiet mind, an unconditioned experience of being, and that presence of being, that loving kindness that emanates from who and what we are. It's infinitely loving and infinitely patient. And we become those things when we reach into that place. All right. So let's open it up for discussion. Talk about some of this stuff. And if folks have kind of things that they want to share in relation to, we can have, like, it's a small group, so we can talk about, hey, I've got this identity thing over here, I've got this kind of, I'm open to all that. I mean, it's up to you guys what you want to talk about, But there's only one of us here, so. Yes, sir.
Kim, when you first started, remember like a few weeks ago, we were talking about the whatever concept of God I have, it's only within the limitations that I have to understand God.
Right.
Right? So now when you started talking about that me, the first thing that came to mind is like, I saw this thing where it's like, this guy is like, if I say that's my car, it's like, you don't confuse the car for me, but when I say this is my body, why do you confuse my body for me? Because there's something inside that's owning this body the same way that there's something inside that's owning the car.
Yeah.
So does that mean that whatever that is, or whatever I believe that I am, which is not what I think, right? It's still limited by the perception that I can have about the concept of me.
I'm not sure I'm...
Well, whatever it is, whatever I have access to actually explain who I am, it's within the limited perception of what I can perceive by me to be.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it's, you're...
So we're always limited by whatever level of awareness we're at, and that's going to be the level of reality that we can perceive.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the things that we talk about, from time to time is all truth is relative.
Okay.
Until we dissolve into truth itself.
Okay. So I'll just run down this stuff, because usually what I write is questions.
Sure, yeah.
So, okay, so if consciousness, all there is pure awareness and consciousness, which gives birth, okay? And the body is just part of that pure awareness, which gives each other a sense of reality or being or existence. Because I get this question a lot. It's like, oh, well, Buddhists believe in like rebirth.
Sure.
And I go, well, all there is consciousness. It's not that Rudy goes into another body and lives. It's just we are pure consciousness. But then my own question came up. This is like, well, then what if consciousness gives birth to the baby? Or does the baby come and then give birth to consciousness? And in reality, there is no baby, and all there is just it giving birth to everything, right?
That's right.
So that's a really tough concept.
Think of it as, you know, I don't like using this kind of language because it gets too new agey, but this energetic undercurrent of life. This energetic undercurrent of life. And it gives rise to everything. It gives rise to everything. And that energetic life, it breathes out a new being. Whether that's a baby or a lizard or a duckling, or it doesn't matter. It breathes out. Life breathes out an experience of itself. It breathes it out into the world.
When does that become that point? I mean, is it happening with two people are having intercourse and then all of a sudden it becomes there, it gives reality to it? Or is it like when all of a sudden a baby's popping out and all of a sudden that's when it gives reality to it? Or it always was? Or, I mean...
That energetic undercurrent, that awareness from which everything really is arising, it's always been there. And it's very much like the concept of a child was written into a script that began with the Big Bang and will end with the last gasp of the universe. And that breathing out of life is like, okay, we're on page 7,256, and now Rudy comes into the scene. Right? And where does life begin? Well, again, we're not what we think we are to begin with. The idea that there's a beginning and an end is something that happens within linear space and time. And linear space and time is an occurrence within the experience of being, but it's not reality. Space and time are concepts. Space and time are this experience of reality that we find ourselves, and they're parts of the experience of reality we find ourselves in. But they themselves are not reality. Reality is that awareness from which it all arises, the absolute essence of all creation. So, it's interesting, right? Because if we examine it from the perspective of the person, and we start saying, well, is it from the moment of conception? Is consciousness inserted at the moment of conception? Is conscious? It's better to understand that consciousness is always there, and consciousness is simply breathing itself out with another breath, and with that breath comes a being. When does that being begin? We're assuming there's any such thing as a beginning. That being has always been there, always been in the script, always been in the story, always been fully present. But in this experience of time and space, this breath, this being, arises in this fashion, in this manner, experiences this set of things, and then falls back into what it originally came from. And it was never separate to begin with. So when did it start? 13.7 billion years ago. And way before that. There's a story that Ram Dass loves to tell. He tells it like every time he talks, so I've heard it so many times now. But he talks about, somebody asked the Buddha, like, how long have we been at this? Like, how long have we been playing this game with ourselves? And the Buddha said, imagine a mountain, a mile high, a mile wide, and a mile thick. And every 1,000 years, a bird flies across the top of the mountain with a silk scarf in its beak. And as it flies across, it just rubs very lightly, drapes that silk scarf across the top of the mountain, just rubs it. He says, for as long as it would take for that bird with that scarf to wear down the mountain, that's how long we've been at this. Why? Who knows? We don't really need to know. We just need to be fully present in what is. So I don't know if that's helpful, but there can be these medical debates, right, about when does consciousness come alive. Well, when you start to look at where we believe consciousness resides within certain, brain formations, obviously consciousness will not be there until those brain formations come. When does that come? 22, 24, 26 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. But none of that matters. Because again, we're not the body. So it doesn't matter when the body begins. It doesn't matter when consciousness, that localized experience or localized expression of consciousness, that version of consciousness that is I, that we associate ourselves with, that, it starts way before that. Way before that.
I guess because we do need concepts, you know, to be able to like for a moral code, for example, you know, where like in Buddhism and in Tibetan Buddhists take it far, you know, like where the whole karmic thing, you know, where it's like it is my job to purify myself because that level of consciousness that I leave behind is going to be, and the parents and their levels of the right and the attraction of their union is actually what attracts this energy of consciousness to their union, and then it becomes therefore. So I have a responsibility to purify myself to the best, so whatever consciousness continues and gives birth to another body doesn't have to suffer through what I have to suffer through. So I have a personal responsibility. It's not for Rudy.
I think
Rudy's gonna be gone. So
karma's an interesting concept, right? Because, you know, when I look at karma, I look at what is the nature of the script. To me, that's all karma means. What's the nature of the script? What's my role in the play called life? What is, you know, for as long as this is here, what's my role? What's my part in the great play? And then I also look at karma more as that cycle of birth and death that occurs within the mind. Right? So if you're still acting from a particular point of view in the world, that particular point of view creates a behavior, and that behavior creates a ripple, and witnessing the way in which we ripple is karma. And if we are a part, if the part we're playing is one where we are bringing a ripple of love and kindness into the world, then our ripple moves one way. If we're creating that moment of difficulty for other beings, it moves in a different way. Both are necessary in order for the whole sea of consciousness, the whole sea of awareness to understand and recognize and realize and experience and express itself. Both are necessary. So karma, you know, karma, I almost, when we talk in Buddhist traditions, I think karma is taken out of context, you know, in terms of the way the Buddha was really trying to express it. Another reason why karma exists, and it is a necessary tool, right? It is a necessary tool. When you've realized the truth for yourself, you don't need a code anymore, right? So I've had this conversation many times with other people over the course of the last couple of years. You know, because it's like, what would we do without rules? Everybody would have their own rules. Well, no. When you realize who and what you are, you don't need rules. It's very obvious. The difference between right and what is it? There's a movie, K-Pax, I loved. And one of the conversations they're having, K-Pax is a movie about a guy who he thinks he's an alien. He's in a psychiatric ward, and he's having a conversation with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist saying, well, what do you do about laws and rules on your planet, you know? And he's saying, you know, we don't have laws or rules. And he says, well then, how do you know the difference between right and wrong? And he said, every being in the universe knows the difference between right and wrong. When we are connected to who we are, right and wrong are no longer, you know, rules that we follow. Right and wrong are, it's not even so much a you know, do no harm, or, you know, try to be more loving, or it's just don't add to the shit. Don't add to it. You know, just, you know, move to the best of your ability with love and kindness in all things. That's it. And if everybody was in that, it's not real, it's not the purpose of it. But imagine if everybody was in a place where you as a being said, all my opinions are false, all of my conditions are illusory, all of my preferences are meaningless, and my only role, my only experience is the one where I step into every moment fresh and new. There's no history, there's no future. Every person I meet them brand new as if we have never met before. And every act I engage in from the perspective of love and kindness in the totality. I am willing to allow myself to be used as a tool by the rest of humanity in order for the rest of humanity to celebrate its own experience of joy. And I have no problem allowing myself to be used in such a way. Imagine if every person moved from that place. We don't have the ability to necessarily move from that place in our society the way it is now. We do our best to do so. But karma is a tool that the Buddha used because he recognized he had a whole group of people who were realized at different levels. Some people coming into it are like, well, what do we do? All right, well, here's this eightfold path, and here are some of the things. And, there had to be some way of getting people to align themselves. There had to be some sort of impetus, some sort of mechanism in place so that they would say, okay, well, there's a good reason for doing this. Realization itself isn't a good enough reason, because when you start to move people in the direction of self-realization, everything gets really shitty for a while. That's not good enough. People want to know, well, what's in it for me? The ego wants to know, what's in it for me? And so karma is a tool that's used in order to say, well, what's in it for you is a good rebirth. Until you get to that place where you go, that's a whole bunch of horse shit. It's beautiful horseshit. It's necessary horseshit. It's just as much horseshit as heaven and hell, though. If I do good things, I'll go to the right place. If I do bad things, I'll go to the other place. It's no different. No different. When Moses came down with the 10 Commandments, Moses didn't need the 10 Commandments. They weren't for him. He had a direct connection to the divine. And he understood the relationship that he and the divine had. But the 10 Commandments were for the Israelites who were going to be roaming around, who had been screwing stuff up the whole time they were on the road. And Moses needed some sort of tool to set the tone, to set the pace, to get people to stop screwing each other over. Here you go. If you guys can't behave properly, we're going to have rules. When you no longer, when you understand what you are, you behave properly because that's just what comes out of it. It's infinite love and infinite patience. It's that. It's what. And whenever you find yourself in a place that's absent of infinite love and absent of infinite patience, you go, oh, there's my work. And you go to work. Over and over and over again. And that's all there is to it. And you don't take anything really too seriously because, this is all just happening. So those are a few kind of points about karma, right? I mean, karma is a beautiful notion. It's necessary to some level at some point within the journey, just like heaven and hell, just like every other element that's used in all these different religious traditions to try to get people to stay on the straight and narrow, to try to get people to act a certain way. It's to keep them from just, don't hurt each other. And at a certain point, you don't worry about that so much as you allow things to be, and you do your best to move in the direction of love and kindness. And the need for rules really kind of falls away. So karma's kind of in that vein, from my perspective.
So the whole concept of like nirvana, right? It's like there is no point to really. It's just like heaven and hell, because it's like, or even like with being awakened. When I'm starting to question now in my head, it's like when the Buddha was asking, "Are you a man?" "No, I'm not." "Are you a God?" "No, I'm not."
That's
"What
right.
are you?" "I'm the awakened." Okay, but even that itself, saying I am the awakened, isn't that a identification within itself, to identify himself within the concept of the man that he was? Because pure awareness, it's pure awareness.
So keep in mind, the highest teaching is silence. The highest teaching is silence. To just sit here quietly would be the highest teaching. But many people aren't ready for silence. You have to be ready for silence. Okay? So words are required to prepare people for silence. And if the Buddha was walking on the road and a couple of yogis came out and they said, "Hey, what are you?" and he just sat there silently, that would not communicate anything meaningful. Not in that context. So he had to start by, dissuading them of the notion that he was anything other than, I am awake to the reality of what is. When you're awake to the reality of what is, you are none of those things. Because again, I don't know is the beginning of wisdom. Right? And so you're not trying to define yourself. Some of the things, language, when you're using it from this place, language is just, it's an instrument. It's a tool. It's a limited tool, but you recognize that it's a limited tool. You're just trying to use it to express express concepts and ideas. But there's no attachment to it. So when the Buddha said, I'm awake, he wasn't necessarily referring to it as a position of identification, but rather trying to share with them the simplicity of what he had found. The simplicity. I'm awake. The whole notion of awakening is not necessarily that we awake, but that consciousness awakens to itself.
So it's not the definition of a being.
No.
It's a definition of a state.
It's not even that. It's understanding what you are. This is that very fine edge of trying to say what we are and what we're not at the very same time. But it goes back to that. It's all a weave of consciousness. The only thing that's real is the intelligence that's behind it all. The only thing that's real is the awareness that's behind it all. The only thing that's real is the energy that's behind it all. That's the only thing that's real. Those are all ways to try to point at it. None of those are accurate. But it's what's behind it all. What's behind it all. And you reach into that and you experience that for yourself. And when you've had that experience, then it's very much like, okay, I get it. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. Because I'm not in it. The only thing that's real is not the I that I've created. It's not the I that I've created. It's not the I that has manifested within this experience. It's not the version of I that has grabbed a hold of sense perception and said, this is me. It is that presence. It is that which is expressing itself through you. And you become attuned with that. That's what awakening is. Awakening is that point at which you go, I'm none of it. But there's something happening. There's something occurring. I can't put words to it. I can't explain what it is. I can't explain what it's not. All I can say is, there's something. That's why I often use, it's all a harmony of motion. That's the best I can. It's all a harmony of motion. And you are a single note within the great harmony. Those are the ways in which I try to describe it because they have meaning to me. And they're useful ways of describing it. So again, I don't know if that's helpful, but there you go.
I'll keep bouncing it around.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes?
So this is definitely something that I've been struggling with. I think it was 2 weeks ago when I came to your class, I got a lot out of that, and I was thinking a lot about just kind of reality and who I guess I am, and that I'm not really me, and all these thoughts. But it was really cool, and I was in this place of I don't know, a really good space, I guess you could label it. And then one of my really good friends, last week, he's now in the hospital, he's in a coma, and might not make it. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm struggling with that. I'm really attached to him. I can't let go of that attachment. That's right. Just me and where I'm at. I wish I could just not be attached to that.
Sure.
But personally, it's just I don't know, I'm struggling with that, and I'm in a different place now where I have been thinking a lot of what is reality, and I've been thinking a lot about death, and I'm gonna die, he's gonna die, we're all gonna die. Not to be so depressing, but it's true. And but I'm in a different place of kind of detachment of nothing matters, and it doesn't feel good, it feels bad.
Sure.
And I'm trying to kind of just be with it and not judge it, but it's really hard.
Sure.
Because I'll be trying to do something, and then I'm well, whatever, it doesn't even matter. I'm just gonna die anyway. But it's terrible. That's not me, and I'm trying not to. I don't know. I don't really know how to say it, but this is something I've definitely been thinking about a lot. And I don't know. I guess I'm trying to understand this, not that approach, because I want to get in a better space about this. Sure. Because I am attached, I guess, to the soul and the body and people I love, and you know, being so detached makes me a little bit sad. Like, how do you just, I guess my question is like, you know, knowing that we're all gonna like pass on, you know, and we're not gonna be here forever. I do understand that. How do you like accept that and like still, you know, live your life and be motivated and like be your highest self?
Sure.
You know?
Right.
That's what I'm struggling with.
So there was a talk I did, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was called Dying the Undying Death. And it really very much focused on the nature of death, both the ego death and the physical death, and you know, all the ways in which we see death, and you know, how we're attached to our concept of self, attached to our concept of other, you know, all the struggles that we find ourselves in those places. You know, when we're in that kind of a place, right, where it's really just, you know, I've had this set of experiences and now I'm in this place of questioning. It sounds like you've come to kind of like a new stage of questioning in your journey, right? Maybe some things have shifted for you and you're like, well, I'm curious about this. That's kind of, you know, in that stage, what's happening is out of the egoic concept of self, the seeker is beginning to form. The seeker that wants to know. The seeker that, you know, is the one that wants to be free. And when as the seeker begins to form, you're kind of being presented with all these experiences. Like, you know, there are new ways of kind of testing you, new ways of kind of showing you. And, you know, for these kind of the initial stages, there are the 5 things that I often talk about, right? They play a very big role when we're at the start of that particular part of the journey. And they are learn to love and trust yourself and to honor your own journey. And all these things, I've got all kinds of stuff on the website on all these things, so I won't go into them too much here. But to love yourself, trust yourself, and honor your own journey. And to practice mindfulness and meditation, to learn to face and let go of our pain, to pay attention to synchronicity, and I'll come back to that. To pay attention to synchronicity, and to be wary of our traps. And so in this stage, you know, one of the things I would say is very much, are you familiar with synchronicity? Paying very close attention to the things that are happening around you and allowing a relationship between yourself and the universe as you teaching you about yourself. And that's what synchronicity is. Synchronicity is you as the universe teaching yourself about yourself. And so, you know, in this stage where you're beginning to question and beginning to look at things maybe a little differently, seeing subtle shifts or maybe not so subtle shifts, using that as kind of like a guidepost, you know, paying attention to the things that are happening around you. And recognize also that, you know, this stage that you find yourself in, you know, some of these things like being confronted with somebody who may be close to death, right? You are now being forced to examine your own mortality. I don't know if you've dealt with, you know, death and all that kind of stuff in the past. Many of us have in many different ways. But when we approach it from a new position of consciousness, when we're in that place, we're like, I have all these questions. I'm curious. And we're also being presented with the potential for death. Our internal dialogue around the nature of mortality takes on it has a different taste. It has a different flavor. And we're looking at it more consciously. And so it opens us up in a new way. And so, you know, it's that sense of detachment. It can be a little scary, I guess, because, you know, we're told that we're supposed to be a certain way in the world, and it's supposed to be, you know, it's supposed to be alive, and it's supposed to take everything so seriously, and it's supposed to be so connected, and we're supposed to have empathy, and we're supposed to have all these things. We talked about this last week a little bit. Camille was bringing up, you know, you were talking about care. You had looked up the term care. And we were talking about how care, you know, caring about things, caring about people, caring about situations, it was more really about your inability to, you know, to be okay with things as they are. I care about this because I'm not cool with it in some way, I think is kind of what it boiled down to. And ultimately, as you begin to kind of experience truth a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, you're less and less concerned with the way things appear to be. And you become more and more comfortable with the way that things are because you know that everything is exactly as it should be and it's all okay. And so that experience of detachment is not necessarily so much as a bad thing as it is a sign of developing wisdom. Because all realized beings and all enlightened beings, whatever term we want to use, they will all come to that place where they basically say, it's all okay. You know, don't worry about it. Just let it go. They'll all say that, and for good reason. But that detachment is an aspect of equanimity. If you are in a place where you recognize from your own experience that everything is all right, everything's okay, I'm okay, you're okay, it's all okay, then you're not so much worried about stuff and you don't necessarily care so much. You're still participating fully in life, but it comes and goes. There's kind of some stages. It's interesting, and everybody's journey is unique. Everybody's journey is unique. So it's one of those things where, you know, you may find yourself a little more detached and a little more detached, and then maybe you have some experiences where you start to question certain things a certain way. You may start to see the world shift, your experience of the world shift, you know, in a place where you are right now, like I said, paying attention to synchronicity, but maybe also another lovely practice is seeing how you label things. Seeing how you label and assign meaning to things. Just being present with that as like something to play with when you remember, you know, playing with it. You know, because this is a place where, you know, as you reach into this a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, seeing how you're defining your world, seeing how you're creating your world will expose you to new insights. And it will open up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more in its own way, in its own time, in whatever way is right for you, whatever is meant for you. Because there are 7.4 billion people on this planet now, and so there are 7.4 billion journeys. And it's different for everybody, but some of the elements are very similar. So those are a couple things that come up. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, and Kate may have some insight into, you know, Camille and everybody here might have some insight into that as well, right? Just, you know, as we go through these different stages, it's just more than anything paying attention to what's happening in the mind, you know, practicing that mindfulness, watching the synchronicities that are occurring in our life, and understanding that there really is something there. There are no accidents. There are no errors. You know, there's no such thing as coincidence. It's, you know, there is something there to be seen. And this is from somebody who was an atheist and a skeptic. And I'm still a skeptic. But, you know, there is something there to be seen. And it's helping guide. It's helping offer, you know, something to work with. You know, yeah. It's a fun place to be. You know, when we start to go, oh, this is interesting. And approaching it with curiosity. What's that else? I don't like this, I do like this, but, you know, just holding it all curiously. There's nothing, one thing to hold on to, recognize as absolutely true. There's no such thing as fear. No such thing as fear. Fear is in the mind, and fear is completely illusory. So, you know, sometimes when we're going through some of these stages, fear creeps up in a big way, because it's like, wait a minute, this is not what it's supposed to be. And we react to that from a place of fear. So if you ever find yourself in those kinds of places, just be aware of that. Fear doesn't exist. What else?
Sounds good.
It sounds good. You know, it's about the practice, right? Though it's about all the ways in which we go out into the world and we examine our relationship with the world, and we put into practice all of those things that we're discovering along the way. And, you know, it's, you know, part of it we can say that part of it, you know, again, going to it from a scientific perspective, is that process of neuroplasticity, right? Within neuroscience, the understanding that the brain, it shapes itself dependent upon your experiences and your relationship with things. And so, you know, if you look in the mirror every day and you say to yourself, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm mean, then you're going to experience yourself as ugly, fat, and mean. But if over time you start to shift your attitude towards yourself, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm beautiful, and maybe you summon up the experience of beauty from your own experience of a sunrise, and you start to equate the two, I'm beautiful, and to bring the experience of the sunrise into your statement of I'm beautiful, and you begin to connect beauty for yourself in a different way, and you begin to see yourself as beautiful, you begin to reshape the mind. begin to reshape the brain, physical structures within the brain. Old neural pathways break down and new neural pathways are established, and that becomes a self-reinforcing mechanism. So at that level, neuroplasticity is, it is the brain being reshaped based on how we're engaging with reality. But that's the appearance of it. It's like that's the mechanics of the engine that's being driven by the divine. The brain is the steering wheel, But the only way that we can get through these things is to practice them. And I went back and forth for a long time about, okay, well if it's, if the brain is just the steering wheel and my thoughts aren't even my thoughts and the whole thing is just happening and, why am I having these thoughts and what's going on here and why? And it's so that we can work the muscles of our experience. If we go to the gym and we're working out a particular muscle group, like you're doing biceps, and you go, okay, I'm going to do this exercise so I can hit it from this angle, and I'm doing this exercise to hit it from this angle, and this exercise to hit it from this angle. It's the same thing with our experience. It's the same thing with our experience. We're being handed all of these things so that we can see past our concept of self, so that we can so that we can recognize what we are, so that we can see it for ourselves. But that practice has to be there. The most important part of the whole journey is the desire to see yourself through the other side. That desire for truth. Like, in Buddhist circles, they talk about that, right? The desire for enlightenment. And then eventually you have to let go of that desire too. But you gotta have that desire to drive you. And that desire coming from the seeker formed out of the ego that wants to escape itself, right? That desire is what pushes us. It's what moves us in the direction of our own realization. It's what forces us to say, okay, well, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, I'm going to see how this works, I'm going to see how this works, I'm going to see how this works. Oh, look, insight. Wow, that was interesting. Oh, look, another insight. Oh, look, I'm expanding. Oh, look, and but it's all from practice. There's earnestness there. There's got to be that dedication, that real intrinsic desire that comes from the true nature of yourself. The true nature of yourself that's kind of been in the background the whole time going, all right, this is interesting. All right, this is interesting. And at a certain point it goes, all right, I think I've had enough of this. I'm ready now. Let's move in a different direction. And suddenly the seeker is born from the ego, and the seeker becomes the tool by which the ego is dissolved. And then the seeker falls away, and desire falls away. But that practice, that's what has to happen in order for all that to occur. So it sounds good. And it's easier said than done. But the only way to the other side of it all is to do the work. There's no other way. And it's not like you have a choice either. That's the beautiful thing. Once you're set on the road, you're on the road. It might be quick, it might be slow. Who knows? Every journey is unique. But once you're on the road, you're on the road. And oh, by the way, the road began when you were born. And oh, by the way, it began long before that. And oh, by the way, it's all just a script. And if enlightenment or awakening or whatever we want to name it is meant for us in this lifetime, it will occur. Within this lifetime is part of the script. Within the script is also the arising of the seeker and all of the practice that leads there. It's just this wonderful little paradoxical game within the experience of being. And you become okay with it all. And you just keep practicing. All right, now this. And you make those big shifts and those little shifts, and you look for, where am I stuck? Rudy was asking before we started, he was like, how do you come to these things? How do you come to these things? And I said, well, for me, the number one thing I focus on is where am I stuck? Where am I stuck right now? And how do I get unstuck from this place? And then I put myself fully into getting unstuck. And then I find myself stuck somewhere else, and somewhere else, and somewhere else, and somewhere else, and somewhere else. That's the process we're all unfolding through. So, yeah, it sounds good. And it's hard work, but that's why there are many distractions on the road to enlightenment. That's That's why be wary of your traps is a big part of one of the things. Be wary of your traps, so we don't get caught anywhere for too long. And if we do that too, that's part of the process. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit now. The practice is, that's where it's all at. Putting these things into practice, working with them, and approaching it experientially. You know, you get more out of holding a book. You can get a book on spirituality. You get more out of holding the book and feeling its weight and examining your experience of being with the book than you do than getting into reading the book. You get more out of being with the book than you do with reading the book, if you understand what it is you're looking for. That's a beautiful practice. Pick the book up, read 5 words, and then put the book down. And just look at the book. Let's use osmosis. Not forgetting the words, but absorbing the nature of book to see self and book and go, wait a minute. I'm the book. The book is me. Yeah. Right, so I'm rambling now. What else?
I don't know, I think Rudy just got it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
He's like, oh. And yeah, he's laughing because, you know, it's hilarious when you get it.
Good.
Like,
I've been had.
Just now. This is awakening you right now.
I can't. Because it doesn't matter. I don't know, we'll let him tell. But, you know, to say, you know, how you were feeling like this disconnect and like what's the point, you know, of anything. I can remember at an earlier session when we were doing it over at the condo, and, you know, I was actually getting kind of irritated with the whole conversation because, you know, it's like, well, you know, if I don't have any control over any of this, and it's all going to end in death, and really anything that I do is irrelevant. I can't really remember what the conversation was. Though that God had, God was in control of everything, which to me is this, you know, this energy or awareness or movement, whatever. And I was like, well, then screw it, I'm just gonna lay on my bed and stare at the ceiling, you know, and it was that disconnect. I was like, well, what's the point? Why should I even bother doing anything, you know? But the purpose for me that served was to, like Bradley says, that failed me into myself, right? I was irritated with that whole conversation. And that went on for a few days. I was like walking around in a state of irritation, but what it did was made me examine, it pushed me to look deeper into myself, because to me that mirrored for me depression. Like if I'm just gonna sit, so there's another label, I am depressed, I am disconnected. No, those are, again, just thoughts that I'm having about this situation. The situation is really just an illusion, it just was. But I'm attaching these labels to it. You know, I'm pissed. I'm not gonna go back. I'm not, you know, all of these things. But that served its purpose, and I had to be in that. I had to be fully present with those feelings of disconnect and my discomfort with those feelings of disconnect. And I had to be fully present and aware of those feelings to let them fall away. As soon as I realized that they were just thoughts that again were illusions, then they fall away.
Yeah, like today even, I'm just in this like weird space, like I needed sunglasses, right? Because I guess I am, whatever, like a servant shop, that's what I do for a living. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get sunglasses. I went to the store, and then I'm like, wait, I'm gonna die one day, so why do I need sunglasses? And I left.
Oh my.
And then I'm like, I felt all depressed, or whatever. And I'm like looking, and then I went to the beach, and I'm like, all these people are gonna die. And I'm just like, I mean, it sounds funny, but like, it's making me feel not good.
Right, yeah.
You know, but it is the truth, and I want to accept the
Right.
truth. I don't want to like fight it.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess I just have to feel it. I don't know.
You do, yeah, but,
Weird.
yeah, and for me when I was at that point, to play around with the idea that it was not, that this is not, this is just for me, a vehicle that basically this conscious awareness uses to interact and get from point A to point B in this space of our manifestation right now. Like, you know, I have to have some way to be present, and it's with this. You know, this is not me, but where this was manifested from manifested me, and it will continue to move on once this is gone. And there just is, this is just so illusory, this that you can see that there might be sadness because of a presence that was in my life, another person. Their physical presence may not be there anymore, but it really never was there. If you can see that it's just this move of whatever you want to call it. It's
Yep.
I don't know. But I can remember being in that place of, well, fuck it.
Right.
Basically, what's the point? But to be present with that and to really, and it sounds like you do a lot of introspective thinking. You're aware of these thoughts, and that's cool.
Mhm.
That you're being present with the presence of these thoughts.
You know, that's another good point, is, you know, sometimes what happens too in these stages is we withdraw from the world out there so that we can bring our attention fully inward. And, you know, that's part of the detachment maybe as well, right? Bringing, you know, just being like, wait a minute, there's some stuff going on here, and I need to create some boundaries and some separation between myself and that, because there's something here that really needs my attention. So sometimes that plays a part as well.
So go ahead and buy yourself some.
Yeah, that's, you know, one of the things that I like to explain is also, you know, so the website that I have, it's Awakening into Life, right? Because once we get through the other side of all the bullshit, once we get through the other side, I mean, there's a lot of pain and suffering and difficulty and nonsense and horse shit, and it's all there. When we get to the other side of it all, it's just this, and, you know, there's a part of us that doesn't really need much of anything. We just, you know, it's kind of like, well, I don't really, yeah, it's fine, that's all fine, I don't really need anything. So, but then when you find yourself, when you're in that place where it's like, well, it's really bright, and it is hurting my eyes, and sunglasses make sense. It becomes that thing. It's like being fully present in your life. It puts you in that place where you just look at everything from the perspective of what's really practical. It doesn't matter what your preferences are or what you want, or that stuff doesn't matter anymore. But there's a practical, like, my eyes really hurt, and sunglasses would be helpful. Ergo, I will purchase sunglasses. And you become fully present in the process of needing the sunglasses, wanting the sunglasses, buying the sunglasses, wearing the sunglasses, and being aware of the fact that the whole sunglass event occurred. And you laugh at it. And that's the experience of awakening into life fully. No longer looking at it through the lens of the sunglasses, but being able to just be fully present in, this too. You know, and then when the sunglasses break, this too. It's being fully awake to life as it is, fully awake to reality as it is, fully engaged without the stories, just But there's so much stuff that has to happen before we can get to that place. Now that's sort of true and sort of not true at the same time, because the reality is, if that's where you're supposed to be, right here, right now, in this moment, you will fall into it. It will land on you all at once. But if it's not, if it's meant to take time, then that's what it'll happen. You know, just for every one of us is different. But it's unmistakable when it occurs.
I want to share something.
Yeah, of course.
I was sitting here and I just got this really overwhelming sensation, right? Of like I just wanted to burst out laughing because something dawned and it hit, you know. And I've had had this struggle with Kate, you know, about her having this awakening, and her like this debate of like, well, I'm just gonna sit on my ass and people are gonna come to me, the ones that are supposed to come to me. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna go after them, and this is the way that it needs to be, because otherwise how are you being of help? And it's just like, you know, it's like those that come to her, right, are the ones that are supposed to come to her.
That's right.
But those that I chase are the ones that are supposed to come to me.
Right.
And I was just like, done. And it was just like, really, I just wanted to burst out laughing. Because I know it sounds really maybe silly,
Not at all.
but I
Not
got
at
it,
all.
you know, and then it's like, oh, how would I ever explain what it is that I feel inside, you know? And it would be, it's like, it's really that I don't care. But not that I don't care, it's that I don't care. But that does not mean that I don't care. It's like, it makes absolutely no sense, I know, but I know. Pretty neat.
No, it makes all the sense in the world to me, you know, because, you know, there's Adyashanti explains it in a way that I really enjoy. And he says, you know, and I've said this before in the past too, but you know, your freedom is inherently tied up in the freedom of others. Your freedom can only be realized when you allow all other beings to be free. When you allow everyone to be who they are, and you allow is a funny statement, when you allow all beings to be who they are. Now, if somebody steps out of the fog and they come to you and they say, Rudy, you have wisdom that I want to tap into. Please share your wisdom with me. Please guide me. Please help me. Then you're in a position where you can say, all right, here I am. Here I am. And you engage with them. But if you run into the fog and you start chasing the mist, expecting people to go, oh, Rudy, thank you for your wisdom, that won't work as well. But you are playing a very important role within the whole thing. And as you guys play off of each other, it's taking you both deeper into your own experience in different ways. Like you're getting another angle on what it is, and at the same time, she's having to figure out how to balance what she knows to be true with how the world is trying to put her in a box. Right? And so you're beautifully playing off of each other and enabling each other's spiritual understanding. And that's not an enablement like the things that you guys talk about a lot in AA. It's a whole different kind of thing. You're facilitating each other's spiritual understanding. It's not growth. I don't like using that word because there's nothing to grow. It's that return. That return to the truth of our nature. It's that remembering, the process of remembering. And you're remembering together. We're all remembering together right now in different ways. So it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's great. I mean, that's a beautiful insight, and there's a lot of stuff there. Something to play with. All right, everybody well? Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's time tonight. So a couple of quick things. Next week, we're going to talk about addiction, the nature of addiction. And we're going to talk about it, you know, we'll talk about addiction in the world and the way we experience addiction. But we're going to talk a little bit, primarily, the focus will be on our addiction to our concept of self, right? How attached we are to that. And so we'll talk about ways that we can work with, you know, addictions in the world and addictions beyond the world. And then the other thing I want to say is that next week will be the last week we were going to meet here. I've made arrangements for these discussions to take place at the Open Mind Zen Center on Sarno Road. This environment, you know, it's been good in some ways. It's been challenging in others. You know, we kind of allowed this environment to serve its purpose. But I think that there's an opportunity for a different kind of engagement in that space. It's Al Rappaport, who owns who runs Open Mind Zen. It's a home that he purchased, and he set it up in a way so that it can be used as, you know, a meditation center and a place where people can share in this kind of conversation. And I was telling Camille, you know, before we were leaving the house, I was like, you know, this is great, but this feels very much like a classroom which makes me feel more like a teacher. And that's not what I'm going for. I like the idea of sitting in a home and speaking with my family. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of a shift in the dynamic, the energy of the space. So that'll be on the 1st of June. We'll be meeting at Open Mind Zen, and I'll talk about it again next week when we meet here, and also put some stuff on Facebook and on the webpage and all of that. And that first discussion there on the 1st of June is going to be about our suffering as our greatest teacher. So. All right, again, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.